What is going on, RotoGrinders? We're here Friday, December 12th, 12/12, RG today. Had a nice little Kyle Pitts night last night, which was something I didn't think we would necessarily see in the NFL. I know we got a lot of that back in his college days, but that was interesting to see that explosion from him last night. Hopefully, you guys all had a good Thursday night. Looking forward to a Week 15 NFL slate, so we'll break that down here. Maybe talk a little bit of basketball as well. Have a, I think, 7-game NBA slate. NBA has been a little bit weird this week with the NBA Cup going on. So obviously with NFL winding down, probably going to be talking some more NBA here and there as well. And I know when Tim's on the show, I'm sure we'll have him talk some NFL or NHL. But for today, it'll be mostly NFL. We'll break down the slate a little bit. But Bobby, how we doing today?
Pretty good. I lost the showdown slate on that David Sills catch by 0.02 points on a stat correction. It's just DFS, how it goes. So yeah, it was like a 55K swing. So not too happy about it, but it's the game we play, hardest game in the world.
Yeah, it looks like those showdown swings can be so crazy because there's not much separating a lot of these slates, so it can get wild for sure. But that is definitely a brutal beat. We'll have to find a way to make it back for you this week. So let's talk about this NFL slate a little bit. Going to be a shorter show today, but we're going to go through the stacks, and then we'll talk about each position at the top, and then I'll throw out a couple bets as well if I have any for the NBA or NFL towards the end. Let's talk about these quarterbacks here. Obviously, we have a couple of big names here on the slate. We got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson's on the board. Matthew Stafford has been getting all the buzz in the world for MVP, as well as potentially a really good option for this week in DFS. Great matchup for him against the Lions, his former Detroit Lions. We know that he's going to want to go out there and throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns, and typically you kind of know where they're going for him. So let's talk about a few of these quarterbacks here. Give me let's start in the spend up options. So let's start with we'll say 6K and up. So Jared Goff and up. Give me 2 or 3 options that you like in this top tier.
Yeah, Stafford's going to be right at the top of the list. I think he's in a really good spot versus Detroit. Josh Allen versus New England. The issue with Josh Allen is how do we stack Josh Allen? That's usually the biggest issue for me. I like Brock Purdy versus Tennessee. Would be good for my best ball bags. I know it's kind of going. It's not really one of the top spends, but 6,200. I don't mind him. Sam Darnold versus Indy, I think is interesting, especially with JSN. That game's in Seattle, correct? Yeah, in Seattle. Those are the main 3 for me. I think you can make a case for guys like Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't been himself lately, but I think he comes around. But I think the top 3 for me are Purdy, Stafford, and Darnold currently.
Yeah, I think I would pretty much agree there. I do think that I think Purdy's a great play here in Tennessee. They're going to likely be able to put up points, and we've seen a lot of offensive production go through Purdy. Obviously you have McCaffrey there, but a lot of his productions come through the air. So, yeah, I like Purdy. I like Lamar. I think Patrick Mahomes is an interesting tournament play just because he does have a tough matchup, not getting a ton of ownership, coming off of that bad game against the Texans. So I think people are sort of off Patrick Mahomes, but I do like him quite a bit in this spot at 6.5. And then obviously Stafford all the way up at the top at 7K. I mean, we talked about Stafford pretty early in the year. Me and you were on the show, and I know he ended up having it might have been right before he had one of the big games. But it's the same story with Stafford. You need him to throw for 303 or 4 touchdowns for him to get there. He's not going to, get there via the ground. He's not going to move around at all. So I think if you're going to give him a matchup, this is probably the best one because the Lions can keep up with him on offense. So maybe force him to score more. And their defense is really bad. So this is probably the ideal spot here for Matthew Stafford. I will say, though, it looks like a lot of the ownership is not coming from this top tier. So let's talk about this mid tier here. We'll say, 5K. So Marcus Mariota up to Bo Nix. Popular guys, Trevor Lawrence at 15%, CJ Stroud at about 14%, Jackson Dart at about 11%. Who are you looking at in this tier, and are you fading any of these chalk guys? Do you think any of these chalk guys are worth the chalk? What are your thoughts on this tier?
I like Jackson Dart a little bit, but he would be the one that I think I'd probably come under on if he's going to be the highest owned versus Washington. From there, Lamar versus Cincy. Lamar just hasn't been himself. I don't think I'm going to be getting to too much Lamar. Mid-tier, like I said, just reiterating, Purdy, I think, is strong. CJ Stroud, I think that's on the lower end. CJ Stroud at 5,200. I think the two guys that stand out the most for me are probably Purdy and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I think for these guys in this tier, Dart, I was a little bit surprised. I thought Dart might be a little bit more popular because people seem to like to play him, but maybe they don't love the stacking options. Maybe they're a little bit worried about him, running less. Obviously, coming off of that concussion injury, he hasn't had. He had the big game against Chicago, but last time out against New England looked really bad on Monday Night Football. So post concussion injury issues, he hasn't had a big game. So I think people are maybe a bit down on him, but this is a great matchup here against Washington. So I don't mind going back to Dart here. Let's talk about these cheapies now, under 5K. Obviously, old man Philip Rivers is highlighting this tier. Crazy to have him back. That's like, I actually think it would be crazier or less crazy if Andrew Luck came back than Philip Rivers. That's where I was at when I heard that news. What are your thoughts on Philip Rivers coming out of retirement at 44 years old to play again? What are your thoughts here?
Did they even ask Luck? Like, I feel like Luck would have been my first go-to.
I know they've asked Luck before.
So they probably just knew that.
Yeah, they probably either just knew that he was, out, or I wouldn't be surprised if they asked him. If they asked 44-year-old Philip Rivers, why not ask 36-year-old Andrew Luck?
Yeah.
So,
the lower end, oof. Like I said, I like Stroud if you consider him in the lower end. I think Tyler Shuck versus Carolina in a game that Carolina has to win. Shuck should be trailing. I think he's interesting. Bryce Young, same game, 5,100. Kind of stinks, but it is what it is. Kenny Pickett for Vegas versus Philly. Isn't that a revenge? There's a little revenge there. It was Pickett on Philly at one point. I'm not sure.
I think he was technically, I think he was on the team last year when he got a ring there.
Yeah, Pickett. I don't even there's nothing great. Feel like people might try to make Brissett work. He's 5'5", though. He doesn't really count. Phil Rivers, I'm not really interested in. I'd rather just kind of play Seattle defense as much as possible. No real interest in Shador at Chicago, 4,700. I know Shador broke the slate last week, but not getting there. No Cam Ward. It's pretty much it. The guy that stands out the most for me is probably Shuck, 4,900. Condensed target tree, cheaper, I guess. Yeah, it would be Shuck for me. It sounds terrible, though.
Yeah, I think 5K and below, the guys that I would be looking at would be Marcus Mariota, right there at 5K, and then it would be Shuck second. It's ugly, but like you said, it's a condensed target tree. Carolina's defense has not been that good, and he's started to run the ball. I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Maybe he had one called back, but I know he had one longish rushing touchdown. Yeah, 2 rushing touchdowns last week. So not that you can necessarily count on rushing touchdowns, but over the last 3 weeks, he's had 6+ rushing attempts in each game. So he's not afraid to get out there and move it a little bit. So yeah, Shuck, I definitely don't mind. You can make a nice little game stack there as like an ugly game stack, I suppose, to fit the value in. It's a very low total. I think it's like 40, but yeah, it's certainly a cheap one. No shot in my playing Philip Rivers. I would no, like I'm objectively worried about him. I think if we didn't see Joe Flacco make a bit of a resurgence over the last few years, I would be even more concerned for Philip Rivers. But Flacco was at least always in the league. I mean, he was just a backup, and then he ended up being a starter. Like Philip Rivers has not played for 5 years. He was coaching high school football. This is one of the crazier things that I can remember in the NFL in terms of like a guy coming back to play. I guess maybe we'll see, but yeah, no shot am I playing him. Probably in any matchup. Certainly not playing him against Seattle. Makes it hard to play pretty much anybody on Indy unless you want to have faith in Jonathan Taylor. So that's pretty much where my head is at on the Colts. I think that they are in trouble, which I feel bad because that's a franchise that hasn't done a ton in their recent history. Obviously, they had the Peyton Manning days, but um, haven't done a ton recently, and were having a great season. So that's a bummer to see because once you lose a quarterback, it can get dark for you real quick. Don Easy asking about Shador. I can't get there personally. Chicago's not necessarily a bad matchup, but I think that game could be pretty ugly. Thought that about last week's game too, and that game had a 33.5 total. They ended up scoring 60 points between the Titans and the Bears. So maybe you can make the case for Shador. I know obviously people are going to like Harold Fannin with David Njoku looking like he's going to miss that game, but I don't know if I can play the Sanders. I would rather just play just Fannin because I think that a lot of production. I mean, he could hit Judy up with a few passes, but I think you can kind of get a lot of Shador's passing production through just one or two of those pass catchers. Let's move on to running back. Pretty loaded running back slate. Achane is on the Monday night slate, so we don't have him. But we have McCaffrey, Gibbs, Henry, Saquon. Saquon finally had a good game last week and now gets a good matchup again against the Raiders. Got James Cook at 8K. Josh Jacobs is on the board. Tough matchup against Denver. Let's talk about these guys. These top five or top six. So Saquon and up first. How are you prioritizing these guys? Obviously, it looks like the field is pretty significantly on CMC per usual. And then Derrick Henry below him at 7.3 are the two popular running backs on the board. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, McCaffrey would probably be my favorite. Derrick Henry, I'll probably be under the field. Jahmyr Gibbs, probably under the field versus the Rams. Saquon, same thing. Like the guy I'm trying to spin up for the most is McCaffrey versus Tennessee. Tennessee is defense really isn't playing well at all. I think I just try to get as much McCaffrey as possible. So yeah, not really interested in James Cook, Jonathan Taylor. It's mainly just McCaffrey or bust up top for me.
Yeah, I think I mean, if you wanted to fade McCaffrey, the points that I would maybe bring up to potentially poke holes in his case is that they're probably going to blow out the Titans. And McCaffrey's on the report with an illness. He's not going to miss the game. I would be very shocked if he didn't play because of the illness, but maybe it's a spot where they could limit him. I wouldn't count on it. I'm just saying, like, if that is something that you wanted to do and fade CMC, that would be like my pitch for it. It's a smash spot for him. He's going to touch the ball 30 times, most likely. And yeah, he's in a great spot. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a good pivot off of him. I think you can always make a case for Jahmyr Gibbs. He's maybe the most explosive player in the NFL right now. He had a bad week last week, and he still scored 3 times against Dallas. So he's just so involved in the offense right now, and they're using him in so many different ways. So I think he is in a great spot with his role. Not necessarily the best matchup, but a great role for him there. I just can't play Jonathan Taylor. I mean, it's a bummer because he could easily put the team on his back, but it's a horrible matchup. And like, I'm just not expecting a lot of efficiency from this Colts team. Like, I think people are maybe overlooking how important that was to Jonathan Taylor's success. Like when you're sustaining drives like that, you can just have all the volume in the world. That's why he is up there in terms of carries per game. But you're just not going to have the same amount of efficiency because they were the most efficient offense in football with Daniel Jones. So definitely concerned about that. James Cook, I think, is in a great spot at low ownership at 4%. You do have to worry about, all the potential vultures there. But if he breaks a couple long ones, he could easily get there. I like Saquon a lot this week. I think there's two ways that the Eagles could go about their offense now. They finally got some success going with Saquon. They got him going in the first quarter last week, and then they kind of turned away from him. And then obviously he broke the long touchdown. Jalen Hurts is just not playing good football right now. I think that they could either approach this game one of two ways, where they just lean on Saquon like they did all of last year, establish the run, get him 25 plus carries. I mean, they can't really afford to lose any more games here. They have to essentially play every game like it's a win or go home. Or they could say, oh, let's get Jalen Hurts going. And that would obviously probably lead to bad things for Saquon. But I think the more likely outcome is that they rely on Saquon in this game. So I like Saquon quite a bit there at 7-1. Obviously, tough to pass up Derrick Henry there. But if you wanted to pivot off of Henry, I think Barkley's a great option as a pivot there. Let's talk about this mid-tier, the 6K range. I guess highlighting that ownership-wise would be Josh Jacobs here at about 13%, Travis Etienne at 10%. Josh Jacobs is still dealing with an injury, and he's still talking about it like in his post-practice recaps, which is not ideal. What are your thoughts on Jacobs and then the rest of this tier?
Yeah, Jacobs, Kyron Williams, and ETN would be the three that I'd have the most interest in, followed by Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey in the 6K range. My favorite currently is Travis Etienne. Just 6,900 for Jacobs. I'd rather get up to Saquon or get up to Derrick Henry. Kyron's role is just with Blake Corum there. Kyron would be better if Devontae Adams were to sit. I seen he had a Q tag, but I doubt he's sitting. I don't really know what the injury situation is. Just like in a split backfield, not interested in Kyron. ETN versus the Jets at 6.5, I think is pretty good. Bashal Tutin, I don't know. I know he left the game with a concussion or something last game, but ETN for me at 6,500 seems like the best play. Travion Henderson in a game versus Buffalo, where they'll probably lean on him a good bit. Him and RJ Harvey are kind of in the same situation. Two rookie running backs that I don't know, they'll be in my player pool for large field stuff, but I don't think I'll be getting a ton to those guys. It's mainly just ETN in this range for me.
Yeah, I think the problem I have with this range is that you have those two strong plays in Henry and Saquon and like the low sevens. You have a couple of really good plays that I like in the 5K range. Totally agree with you on Kyron. I think I don't want to say unplayable, but I'm certainly not getting there. I mean, the Lions, as bad as they've been defensively, they've been good against running backs. I know Josh Jacobs had a decent game on Thanksgiving, but so far, like we have them as one of the worst matchups for running backs, and they're just an extreme pass funnel. So I cannot play Kyron. I would think it would be a tough matchup for him, even if we weren't concerned about the workload there. And I mean, Blake Corum looks pretty good, so I think that could be something that could eat into that workload throughout the rest of the year. So can't do that. I don't mind Rico Dowdle here at 6'6". A little bit worried about him maybe being limited due to that injury, but could be a good tournament play. Josh Jacobs, tough matchup here against Denver. So I probably don't play a ton of Josh Jacobs. So it's like the one play I do like in this range is Travis Etienne at 6'5". Other than that, I'm probably not playing anybody in that range. I just think it's a really tough price point. I mean, I could be talked into Travion because, just saying maybe the Patriots figured out that during the bye week, hey, Ramondre Stevenson is not that good. And he's certainly not better than Travion Henderson. So maybe you can convince me that they can figure that out. But Vrabel
They're
does
still
not.
going to use Ramondre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know like it will never be like Henderson's backfield, but
Yeah.
I don't think that this should be a 50-50 split. And I know a lot of people agree. If it was 60-40, I could play Henderson. If it was 75-25, I think Henderson would be a smash play. And I think 75-25 is doable with the way that these guys play. I know there are some concerns with Henderson's pass blocking, and I know Ramondre is very good at that. But at the end of the day, like if Trayvon's just missing out on pass blocking snaps, that's totally fine because you can't get fantasy points for blocking. But I just have concerns that they actually will turn the keys over to Henderson. And even in the Giants game on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago before the bye, he was the better player. I mean, he had that long run. He had like 11 carries for almost 70 yards. Ramondre had like, I think 11 carries for like 35 yards. Like it's just the same story with Stevenson just being, inefficient, just like, plotter out there. So I could be talked into Henderson because the Giants do allow a lot of big plays, and Henderson is certainly capable of that. But I do have my concerns that they're just going to continue to bore us to death with Ramondre Stevenson. But this range here in the 5Ks, I think is a great range. Obviously, Woody Marks is going to be popular. I think rightfully so. If Nick Chubb's out, this is going to be a spot where we're going to see maybe 25 carries here for Woody Marks, and I will not be passing up that. The Texans are 9.5-point favorites. We saw it last week when they were running away with things with the Chiefs. Woody Marks had 26 carries, caught a touchdown as well. So he's going to be used both ways, ground and through the air. Woody Marks, I cannot see any holes here. It's a great matchup, great role, especially if Nick Chubb is out. Even if Nick Chubb plays, still think Woody Marks is a fantastic play. If you were looking to fade the ownership, Tyrone Tracy at 5.5 is someone who is interesting. That's a kind of a question mark for me. I want your take on that and how they're maybe going to approach that backfield, because Tyrone Tracy was in week 12, he got all the work. It was like 75-25 split. Obviously, he got banged up in that last game before the bye. He was off the injury report coming into the week, though, so he's going to be good to go. It'll be interesting to see how much him and Singletary split it up. Don Easy saying Singletary greater than Tracy. If I had to play one of those guys, I'm certainly not picking Devin Singletary. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Tracy is the lead candidate to be the lead back there, and he's more likely to get work in the pass game. I guess maybe you could say Singletary is more likely to score, but it's a great matchup for those guys too. What are your thoughts on the Giants backfield and then the rest of this tier?
Yeah, I think Tracy might end up getting being worked in like in this scenario, especially from they have been using Singletary, so dual backfields like I don't love, but I do think there is upside to Tracy. If I was picking between Tracy at 5.5 and Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to be pretty chalky at 5.6, like Kenneth Walker has to worry about a split too with Charbonnet. So, yeah, I think I might in large field tournaments play more Tracy. I think the guy that stands out, the two guys that stand out the most to me, Woody Marks, we've seen on an island game pretty much how much they're willing to feed him, especially when Chubb is down. And they just kept giving him the ball for 3 yards, and he got the 26 touches. I think Woody Marks is definitely my favorite in that range. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to Walker at 5.6. I think you could kind of take a shot on Tyrone Tracy. And that would be like the flip for me. And this range is probably playing Tracy over Kenneth Walker, especially if I have Jackson Dart teams, because Tracy does catch passes in the backfield, out of the backfield. So I think he's relatively interesting. The final two, Kareem Hunt and Devin Neal, they're more just large field tournaments plays and not really getting to a ton of either.
Yeah, I think we see that tier pretty much the same. I mean, even if you wanted to say Singletary was like a pivot off of Kenneth Walker, I'm fine with that as well. They're going to be in a spot where they can run the ball quite a bit because that game's going to get pretty ugly. But it could also get ugly really fast to where Kenneth Walker and even Charbonnet aren't playing much by the fourth quarter, because we've seen the Seahawks have that happen a couple times, and the Colts defense has been good this year. So I don't really like Kenneth Walker either. I would prefer even Devin Neal at lower ownership. But I'm curious if Don Easy has some insider knowledge on this running back split, because he seems very confident that it's going to be Singletary over Tracy. But going back to week 12 here and the Giants game against the Lions, which that game was close. So it wasn't like, it was a split where Tracy was playing more because they were throwing the ball a ton. Tracy played 58 snaps compared to Singletary's 25. So obviously, week 13 looked differently because Tracy got that injury and didn't come back. I don't know exactly what point of the game he got banged up, but I don't know. I think they're both in play. I think they could easily both also have solid games. They've shown the willingness to run those guys both, especially when they're ahead, and they are favorites in this game against Washington. So I think both those guys are in play. I would prefer Tracy though, and it's a great matchup for both of them against Washington, who's not been able to stop the run. Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me in the 5K range. I mean, maybe you could talk me on to like someone on the Bears here as like a milli maker type dart throw play here, Monungai or something like that, but probably not getting carried away with that. I think the range is already too strong. Let's pop over to receiver. Obviously, we touched on a lot of these situations at quarterback, but I mean, we have all the studs on this slate. We have Puka, JSN, Jamar Chase with no T. Higgins as well. Excuse me, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams, who just scores a touchdown or two every single week. So all these guys in the 7K range, I think, are fantastic options. JSN's the one that it's tough to not like him, but I'm just worried that game's just going to be not that great for fantasy production. I mean, we've seen JSN get it done on limited volume, so he could easily get it done again. But I would prefer Puka and Jamar Chase over JSN. Am I crazy for that this week?
I like JSN and Jamar Chase, and then Puka right behind them. I get it. Puka's in a great spot. But from that wide receiver group this week, I think I prefer Devontae Adams. If he's healthy, he has the Q tag. If he didn't play, then yeah, give me all the Puka. But right now, I'm thinking Devontae's going to play. So Chase without T. Higgins, JSN just being like the only real main target in Seattle, I would gravitate more to those guys.
Yeah, I think you can make a case by saying, if I'm going to use one of these Rams receivers, $1,500 cheaper for Devontae Adams, he could easily have a game that's better than Puka. So yeah, I can get behind that. I think for me though, Jason's just difficult to spend up for. The Colts haven't been that great defensively against the pass, so you can make a case there. But like if I'm paying 8.6, I like Jamar Chase more. Matchup against the Ravens, that's also been pretty good for receivers, and no T. Higgins. So I like Jamar Chase a lot this week. And then I would prefer Puka over JSN as well if I'm spending that kind of salary. So that's like the conundrum that I'm dealing with at receiver this week. But also, it kind of feels like you can't go wrong with any of those guys. It's just more so how you play them. But Jamar Chase definitely my favorite at the position, price considered. Let's drop down here a little bit. In the mid tier, you can make the same case for Jameson Williams to be like the Devontae Adams to Amon-Ra St. Brown's Puka Nacua. 6-1 for Jameson Williams. He's been heavily involved over the past couple of weeks, obviously with Amon-Ra being a little bit banged up with the ankle. I think he's pretty much good to go at this point, but nonetheless, 9+ targets in back-to-back weeks with Jameson Williams. We've seen him kind of become more of a volume guy with Dan Campbell calling plays. He's been explosive. Michael Wilson, I think, is also an important name to touch on here. His volume with no Marvin Harrison, who was ruled out right before he went live. Michael Wilson's volume is insane. And also, is Michael Wilson just actually really good? I mean, some of those catches he made last week were insane. I know Michael Wilson's been a guy that we've clowned over the past couple of years, but maybe not necessarily the best spot with Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett. They've turned to the pass quite a bit. And it's like he's dropping back and he's looking for Trey McBride or Michael Wilson, and that's it. And Matt Smith's in the chat saying Arizona missing starting left tackle, only a 14.5 team total. All good points, but if Brissett throws the ball 30 times, you can make a case for 15 targets for Michael Wilson. That is how dominant the volume is here. And he's saying Stingley clamp. Agreed. But again, if he has 15 targets and he has 6 catches for 70 yards, then maybe he finds the end zone. He can have a bad game, but still produce from a fantasy perspective. So I still think Michael Wilson is a strong play. He's one of those guys that, fine with locking him in season long. there are some other options that I think you can maybe make a case for DFS, so you don't necessarily need to play him there. But curious your thoughts on Michael Wilson and the rest of the 6K group. Gotcha on mute.
Michael Wilson, currently, I think I'm going to be under on. Just like with the Houston pass defense, I don't love it. Yeah, it's a very condensed target tree, but he'll be in my player pool, but I'm going to be under the field.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice and Devontae Adams, I don't know if they're in the range, but those are the two guys that I think, rather than spending up for two of Jamar Chase and JSN, like I'd want to get one of Adams and Rashee Rice. I think those guys are really good plays. And then Nico Collins, you could throw in there as well in the same game as Michael Wilson. Just guys, like Nico Collins is going to get a ton of targets versus Arizona too. So those would be like the main three for me. Zay Flowers is going to be in the mix at 6'3". Probably be under the field on Flowers. He just doesn't do much for me, but I think he's going to find significant ownership from down from 8K to 6K if we're doing that range. JMO has seen an uptick in Detroit's offense. I still think I'd prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tet's there at 6K, like Tet a little bit versus New Orleans. And those are like the main guys, but definitely getting to a lot of Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams, and Nico Collins as like my second receivers in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael Wilson's going to be a huge discussion for DFS this week. I mean, Matt's bringing up great points. Doesn't think Houston offense good enough to get up 14, 21 points. I agree with that. I mean, they are almost 10-point favorites. They're certainly going to win the game. I certainly think that they're going to control things, but it also doesn't matter what the score is. Like, obviously, you need Arizona to score, a couple touchdowns for Mike Wilson to have a chance to score, but he can also he can get 100 yards on 15 targets. I mean, in the 3 games with no Marvin Harrison, he's had 16, 15, and 18 targets, 10 plus catches in all those games. Yes, this is by far his worst matchup, but he did that against the Niners. He did it against the Jags as well. And Arizona over the last 4 games have been the most pass-heavy team in football. So they're going to throw the ball regardless of the score. They could be up and they're probably still going to be a pass-heavy team. I don't think that there's any chance that they're ever controlling this game. And it is by far the worst matchup. Houston probably has the best defense in the league. So I think Michael Wilson's going to be a huge turning point. For me, it comes down to ownership. If he's not going to be popular, if people are going to be afraid of that matchup, I will gladly play Michael Wilson at lower ownership. Right now, we have him projected for 14%. I think there's a chance he comes in under that because people are afraid of the matchup, but the volume is going to be out of control for Michael Wilson. There's no denying that. So it's going to come down to ownership for me on Michael
Wilson. At 6'6". Like, I'd rather play Nico at 6'7". 6'7".
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather play Michael Wilson than Nico. Honestly, I think we're going to see more volume especially because Woody Marks is a guy that we've been talking about a ton. If I'm playing Woody Marks, I would rather play Michael Wilson than Nico Collins. And I'm going to be playing a lot of Woody Marks. So that's kind of where I'm at. I will say, though, that you can find some options a little bit more expensive than Michael Wilson and a little bit cheaper. But if we're getting Michael Wilson at single-digit ownership, I'll play him in the bad matchup because I'm it's tough to not project him for 12-plus targets, and 12 might be like on the conservative side. So that's going to be a very interesting tournament play or tournament discussion on Michael Wilson there. I want to talk about also these Jacksonville receivers. We've talked about Travis Etienne. It's a crowded team here for the Jags now. Obviously, they're getting Jacoby Myers very involved. We talked about Etienne. If you're not playing Etienne, where do you sit on these Jacksonville receivers? We finally saw Brian Thomas have a pretty solid game. I mean, he made that sick one-handed catch on the sideline last week. I don't know what it is. It's definitely a gut call, which I don't typically do a lot of in the NFL. But Brian Thomas, man, I think he is potentially in for a breakout game here. It only takes one play for Brian Thomas to get on the board in a big way. The Jets' secondary has been bad since they got rid of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams because they can't get any pass rush. Jacksonville's certainly going to put up some points. What are your thoughts on the Jags? And I know, like, even if you wanted to play a pass catcher, you can make the case that Myers is going to be the guy projecting for more volume. But I want your thoughts on these Jags guys, and then maybe a few of the other options in the 5K range that you like.
It's crazy to me that Myers is projected for more volume, but it just is what it is in this Jaguars offense so far.
Yep.
I think I'd prefer Myers currently, but I do like Brian Thomas as like a tournament play. Myers is probably one of my favorite plays in that range. If you're removing Debo now, I think someone said it in chat. Debo might be out.
I think he got a
Terry
downgrade.
Boost up a good bit for me. Juwan Jennings versus Tennessee. I like just because like pretty much everyone in the San Francisco offense, he's gonna have a good matchup this week. Yeah, maybe that would pretty much be it. Like I'm not really forcing too much in this range. Luther Burden, but that's getting down into the 4.8. So yeah, that's mainly where I'm going in the 5Ks is Myers, Terry McLaurin, Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of these 5K guys are going to come with within like stacks. So for example, if I'm playing Jackson Dart, Terry McLaurin is a good run back. If I'm playing, Tyrone Tracy, pairing him up with a mini stack there with McLaurin, I think makes sense, especially if Debo is out. Wan'Dale Robinson would be the guy. Like if you're playing Dart and you're pairing him up, it has to be Wan'Dale, unless you have a sneaky option that I'm not thinking of. If you're playing Purdy, I think it has to be Jennings or Kittle or both, or probably two of Jennings, Kittle, CMC. So he kind of falls into a stacking option. So a lot of these guys, I think you can make cases for in terms of stacks or how those guys would potentially fit in. And then if you're playing Josh Allen, obviously you have Kincaid, but Khalil Shakir, I mean, if you're playing Josh Allen, Khalil Shakir has to be someone you're at least thinking about stacking him with. But yeah, I think the 5K range not super enticing for me. Mainly guys I have interest in because of stacks there. But yes, I agree. Brian Thomas is probably my favorite tournament play at the receiver position this week because I think again he could easily have one or two long touchdowns. And Myers has scored a touchdown I think in 3 straight games, and I believe in his first game with Jags he had a touchdown. Well, I know he had a touchdown called back. I don't know if it was his first game or not, but so he could easily have scored a touchdown in every game so far as a Jag, which is interesting. But yeah, I still think Thomas is the higher upside guy. Let's get ugly here at the position, and then we'll move on to tight end real quick. Anybody that you like as like super cheap punt options? There's one guy that I really like, and I'm curious if you have anybody that might match up here. What are your thoughts on the super value options at receiver?
Luther Burden would probably be my favorite 4.8 for the Chicago Bears. From there, Trey Tucker versus Philly, I think I'm going to have a lot of interest in for the Raiders. And I like Jaden Reed. I don't know if Jaden Reed couldn't get his season going here in week 13, 14, whichever week it is, 14. But is it 15? Which week is it?
15.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jaden Reed would be someone I'd have interest in for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that team kind of shakes out with Reed coming back. Obviously, Watson's been dominant. He's been really he's been the Christian Watson that Aaron Rodgers was making people think that he was going to be back when Rodgers was still in Green Bay. He's been really good, but it'll be interesting to see if Reed comes in and works in right away. The situation that I'm interested in is these Cincinnati guys against Baltimore with no T. Higgins. In that Baltimore game on Thanksgiving, no T. Higgins, so it's the exact same matchup and the exact same situation with T. Higgins out. Andre Yoshivas ran 50 routes, which was just one fewer than Jamar Chase, so he was playing full-time slot. And Mitchell Tinsley was not playing in the two wide receiver sets, but he earned 8 targets. I think both of those guys are very, very strong plays. It gets tough, like if you're not playing Burrow, which we do like Burrow. So you can play, if you're playing Burrow, both of these guys, you can certainly fit in one of those two value guys along with Jamar Chase. But any thoughts on Yoshibas or Tinsley? I think I prefer Tinsley because he's 3-1. So, you can punt with him there and hope he catches a touchdown. And I think he's actually a really good player. He's like one of the better preseason guys this year. I think he might have even had a good preseason last year as well. I think Tinsley's fantastic as a player, and I think giving him a bit of an expanded role will go a long way. I know he had a couple bad drops in that Thanksgiving game, but I like Tinsley a lot. So what are your thoughts on Yoshibas and Tinsley?
Yeah, Tinsley at 3-1, I definitely prefer over Yoshibas. I didn't even realize Tinsley was there at 3-1. Yeah, it would definitely be Tinsley for me. He'd be like the main punt that I'd have interest in. Like, there's no one really down here. I forgot to mention Jaden Higgins. I like Jaden Higgins as well, especially if you like Stroud. You like Stroud doubles. Jaden Higgins versus Arizona at 4,200. I think he's interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I love that call. Higgins has looked pretty good. Role has been expanding, so I like that one a little bit, especially if you are playing Stroud. And I think you can make a case for, if you're playing Woody Marks and then maybe you're bringing it back with Michael Wilson or McBride, you can also play Higgins there too as well. You probably don't want to play, Higgins and Nico Collins without CJ Stroud, but I think you can definitely make a case for Higgins with another Houston guy because he is so cheap. I think that's pretty much it for the guys that I'm getting a ton of interest in. I do still think Yoshibas is a good play as well. I agree with you. I prefer Tinsley because he's $1,000 cheaper. But if Yoshibas is going to be 1%, I like him quite a bit. Let's pop over to tight ends because there's another name that's getting talked about in chat right now that I definitely want to bring up. Mike Gesicki. Matt is bringing up Mike Gesicki, who had a big game last week against Buffalo. In that game, Thanksgiving with no T. Higgins, Gesicki ran 20 routes, which was not ideal. Drew Sample actually ran more routes than him, but last week it was pretty much flipped where, we didn't see Drew Sample, and then Gesicki was kind of leading the way in terms of routes. He had 6 targets, 6 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown. For me, I guess it's more so how many guys can you play with Burrow? So if you're playing Burrow, can you play 3 pass catchers? And I don't think you want to play 3 receivers because that would just be a ton of opportunity cost. But can you play Jamar Chase, one of the 2 value guys, and Mike Gesicki? Obviously, you would probably want Derrick Henry as a run back or something like that. But what are your thoughts on Mike Gesicki here?
Yeah, I like Gesicki a lot. I definitely think you'd play 3 pass catchers with Burrow. Tight end usually correlates to QB ceilings as well. Like Gesicki, Colby Parkinson, it's like the same situation with Stafford. Like,
Yeah.
If I'm playing 3 pass catchers, it's going to be Adams, Puka, and Parkinson. Like, it just makes sense. I think a lot of my good teams had that stack last week. Similar with Schultz, even though he's 4,100, like Nico, Higgins, Schultz, or Nico and Schultz, I think is very interesting on the slate. Outside of that, like, I don't love tight end. Like, there isn't much that stands out. Like, you play Mark Andrews, but likely's always there. And as we've seen, I think Mark Andrews had 1 point last week, 1 fantasy point, so not really interested. George Kittle, 5,400. I think I'd rather just go to Gesicki, Parkinson, or who was the other one? Schultz and Stacks. You know what I mean? Kittle works, but he also is negatively correlated to Christian McCaffrey. So I want to see definitely have more McCaffrey this week. And I don't know if I want McCaffrey and Kittle together, although you could definitely play that.
Yeah, for me, I don't think I'm playing I honestly don't think I'm going to be playing any tight ends above 4K this week. I think there's so many good options that are super cheap. Harold Fannon's another guy that we touched on a little bit, but I think you maybe make a case for an ownership fade on Harold Fannon because yes, he had a massive game, and yes, David Njoku's likely going to be out. He didn't practice again today, so he's probably doubtful. But it's Shedeur Sanders. I'm still not I'm not there on Shedeur Sanders yet. So if you want to make a case that this Browns offense might not be, super efficient, I can still certainly get behind a potential Harold Fannon fade. But I do think that he projects as one of the better plays on the board for a reason. If you're not playing him, I think it's mostly because of ownership. But
I'm currently fading Fannin. I think that's bad.
it's a little scary because again, like he could have 10 plus targets, and you can make a case. You can make a case for him leading this slate of tight ends in targets, which at 4K is going to get the job done. But there are a lot of good plays that are cheap, and so I'm worried that right now we have him projected at 22% ownership. That's a lot for a tight end. So if he gets, and especially if you're playing in smaller contests, and he's like 35% owned, can you just dodge him having him? He could have 5 catches for 50 yards, and can you just dodge that and find someone to outscore him? I think you can.
The thing is, he's getting a ton of red zone looks too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I
he
mean,
seems like he's his first read, and then you're removing Njoku. It seems like it would be a bad fade, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it certainly does not feel good. But if we were, simply looking for ownership fades, if he gets to like 35%, I think you can make the case because there are so many options of even value guys. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. Like AJ Barner, I know it's a good matchup for him, but
I
I'm
just
worried
don't
about
know
the
what
volume.
he does. He hits my teams every week, and he never
Yeah,
does it.
yeah, and I'm worried about volume there for pretty much all of the Seattle offense. But
Except JSN.
yeah, except for Jason. Yeah. But other than that, tight end, you mentioned Parkinson. I guess the Baltimore guys, both of those guys are pretty interesting plays because they, especially Likely, like he's I think a good tournament play because he's
really good at football.
yeah he's amazing, and he's like when he has big games, they are massive, and that's exactly what you want out of tight ends. You're not going to find many players in this range that have the ceiling that Likely has already shown. That Cincinnati game on Thanksgiving, he had like 95 yards and he fumbled the ball at the half-yard line. So I mean, he could easily have a 25-point game on the docket already this season. So yeah, Likely is a guy who I like quite a bit. I think you can spin a wheel and play one of those tight ends, one of those 3 tight ends in that Cincinnati game, and feel pretty good about it. But I think that's going to do it for tight end, unless there's anything else you want to touch on.
Someone said goal line carries for Barner. Maybe that's why he pops into my stuff so much.
Yeah, he has been the tush push guy there.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah. We're not talking defense, right?
No. I mean, defense, it's the same case for me as it is every week. It's just try to spend as little dollars as possible.
The Jaguars versus the Jets, I would imagine, are going to be pretty popular.
Yeah, especially if it's was it Brady Cook?
Yeah.
It could be a rough go. And I think, I mean, if you've all the salary in the world, Seattle's in a smash spot there. But I'll give out a couple bets real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Touched on this guy quite a bit already on this show, but a bet that I like this week: Mitchell Tinsley, anytime touchdown scorer, anywhere from plus 360 to 4-1. I think is a good play. You can also play his yards. I think he's a potential ladder candidate for receiving yards. He's just a guy who earns targets when he's out there, and I think his base prop's like 29.5, so you can play that at like 50 plus yards and have some nice juice there. So Tims is a guy that I like. I don't have any NBA bets popping right now. I'll rerun the models and probably have some bets in there on scores and odds in a few minutes. So check those out. But yeah, anything else you want to touch on?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, we kind of hit on everything.
Yeah, we also did just get word that Cedric Tillman's questionable for this week. So if he plays, that's their red zone guy. He could easily take away some looks from Fannin. If Tillman plays, I think it'll make the Fannin fade feel a little bit better, but still an uncomfortable fade to say the least. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us.
Not at 2-7.
Who's that?
Ben Sinnott.
Yeah, I can see that.
I have 2 girlfriends or whatever.
Yeah, that was so funny. I could see that. I think he's like a little bit more of a sketchy option because like, you don't necessarily know where the volume's going to be, and they have a couple other tight ends there, but definitely a tournament option. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us. Anything else you want to hit on?
That's it.
All right. Well, good luck in week. What's that?
I said good luck this week, guys.
Yeah, good luck in week 15. We'll be here next week as well, and then make sure you guys are checking out all the other content, and we got some NBA shows, obviously the Friday Night NFL show as well. So make sure you guys are checking those out. Until next time, good luck, everybody.